Welcome to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show. It's cricket all the way here. As we talk about the game, we talk about playing it, we talk about coaching it, and mainly we're here to help you out for a little while. My name's David Hinchliffe. I look after things, and helping me to help you is the Director of Cricket at Millfield School. It's Mark Garaway. Hello, Garras. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. Very good.
Super news. Yeah, no Sam Lavery this week, who's normally on the show. That's 2 in a row he's missed, so he's going to have a black mark against his name. But don't worry, we'll catch up with him soon. I'm sure he'll catch us up with everything that he's been getting on with in the cricketing world.
Busy boy, isn't he?
Yeah, good. That's what we want. We don't want to be too quiet, do we? It's
for sure.
Yeah, I've got to keep busy. Speaking of keeping busy, there's a couple of games of cricket going on at the moment that are of interest to certainly you and me, Garras, and probably a couple of other people as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's the Ashes, of course, and I wanted to have a look at something specific regarding the Ashes because it's come up a few times in the Test matches at different points, and that is to do with the lengths that different bowlers bowl at different times of the game. You know, England have been accused of getting their lengths wrong, and Australia have decided to bowl a lot of bouncers at certain England batsmen. So it's interesting that certainly in this series it's a little bit more nuanced, if you like, than saying, okay, well, we're just going to hit the top of off stump. The old Glenn McGrath, run in, bowl a ball, try and hit the top of off stump, and if it does a bit in the air, does a bit off the ground, then all well and good. But, whatever, I'm still just going to do exactly the same thing every time. So with that in mind, where do you come from when it comes to these kind of tactics? Certainly at the international level, but even more so at lower levels, at club level, at school level, things like that. Is there more to it for any bowler to say, well, hang on, I need to find what lengths are going to work for me in this situation, in these conditions, on this particular day?
I think for a lot of club cricketers, the length difference isn't, you haven't got as many options available to you for a seamer at club level because ball velocity is less, and also the preparation that goes into most club pitches. Obviously there are some that are absolutely fantastic and similar to first class and test match wickets, but you haven't got as much scope as a fast bowler to be able to hit different types of lengths. You try and bowl a bouncer on some pitches that we play club cricket on and that you and I have played club cricket on over the years, and
yes.
you're not going to get anything out of that in particular. So when you go higher up, the pitch hardness gives a fast bowler more scope for different types of lengths. So I suppose in club cricket, you're talking about a difference in your actual hitting of a length. And you might need to be more precise, or there might be a little bit more getting out of shifting your length up a couple of inches as opposed to changing your length completely. So those are the things that we talk about mostly in the club game. Occasionally you get on a wicket. I've played on a very good wicket at banter on the Isle of Wight, where you could bowl more as if you were a first-class cricket bowler because there was a carry and bounce in that wicket that allowed you to do so. But equally, you play away the following week, and it's about trying to hit length on a regular basis and maybe being really subtle in the lengths that you hit when you do that. And a lot of bowlers would find it easy to bowl on those slower wickets because their natural get it up there, swing it, even just short of a half volley, was more akin to having success on those decks. So that's the difference to me between club and international cricket, is ball velocity and also the carry of the pitches. And both these two pitches that we've seen so far have been slow, haven't they, in comparison with some of the ones that we've seen over the years. But even so, there's enough carry in there that people can hit the middle of the pitch and get enough out of it, and then shift their length into more conventional lengths to induce an edge or whatever. I think the difference between the two sides is that in the first Test match it was about ball velocity, it was about being able to make people go back and then dragging them forward, which is old-fashioned type of bowling. And I think Australia have got the ball velocity in order to be able to do that, haven't they? And that's been shown when England have ever gone away and played on hard, flat wickets, that ball velocity rather than lateral movement has been massively important. And that's what all the commentators are going on at the moment, that even somebody like Josh Hazlewood, who was considered to be the Glenn McGrath of that bowling attack rather than the Brett Lee of that bowling attack, has been hitting 88 to 90 mile an hour, as well as doing his skills on a consistent basis, which has been, one of the defining things so far of these 2 test matches. But in this last test at Adelaide, because of the lights, because of a ball, because of a combination of those two, there have been times in the game where the ball has been able to go laterally, and probably in England's first innings with the ball, they didn't get the ball up there enough. The lights weren't obviously at play, but the ball was new, and they bowled too short. And there's been little windows in this game where the ball's gone laterally, and in that first crucial time after Joe Root won the toss, we didn't get the ball up into the right areas sufficiently, and it was only in that second innings under floodlights that Jimmy Anderson got back to his absolute best, was well supported by Chris Wokes, and we looked competitive, didn't we, when the ball was going around in floodlit conditions. But outside of that, I think the simplicity of the bowling plans from Australia in effectively bowling fast all of the time, but hitting good lengths with the odd bumper against our better batters, and then our bottom 5 batters haven't got a chance, have they? Because they're just going to absolutely bomb the proverbial out of them, and then get the ball up there. But they're going to be forcing them back. And the only person to date out of our lower order players that's looked as if they can really cope with that has been the debutant Craig Overton, who stood up to it fantastically well in that first innings.
Yeah, and I guess that whole question about the word plans comes into it, doesn't it? In saying, well, it's saying that, perhaps England's plans weren't right and perhaps Australians' plans were right, but it comes back to that. Part of it comes back to the Mike Tyson saying, isn't it, that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So there is a scope for, right, how can we adapt here? And perhaps, if there isn't, if there is a plan and you stick to it for too long, then perhaps you're showing then that you don't have the adaptability to think, well, perhaps we should try something else here. And I think that's true in club cricket as well. They're often, with many club sides, many club bowlers, the plan is pitch it up, bowl it off stump, hope it does a little bit in the air, hope it does a little bit off the pitch, cross your fingers that they're going to hit one up in the air. But actually, even though that is an extremely good plan and it works a lot of the time, sometimes that plan doesn't work. And if you haven't got that plan, what adaptability have you got? What other ideas have you got? What else can you do? And it may be that if you're in conditions when you can't, you are quick enough and you do have a flat enough pitch that you can, with enough bounce and carry it, that you can try a couple of bounces and see what happens. That's not beyond the realms of possibility, even for relatively young players or relatively not good wickets. But it's a matter of trying it and see what happens. And I think often you can get stuck into a plan and forget that there are other options, and they might be lesser options. But if plan A isn't working, start thinking on your feet.
I remember bowling once on a tour match. We were on tour and we were playing in the middle of Royal Ascot Racecourse. So there's a cricket pitch there, beautiful place. But it's so slow and low. It was unreal. And they had this big fellow, massive chap, came into bat, and every time I pitched it up, didn't matter where it was, didn't matter if it swung or nipped or whatever, he just seemed to club it. And obviously he played all of his cricket there. And I remember the captain, John Hilsom, who's no longer with us, but a fantastic cricket brain, he said to me, stick somebody out at deep mid-wicket and just try and bowl him a massive long hop. And I went, what? I mean, why do you ever want to try and bowl a long hop? But so I ran up, bowled two length balls. One got smashed to a fence, the other one he defended. And the third ball, I bowled the biggest long hop of my life and hit it straight down the bloke's throat. And that's an example of having plan B, because plan B doesn't always have to be what is conventionally seen as fantastic bowling on those slow and low wickets. It can just be something different, and we often see now, don't we, in club cricket, that people go to changes of pace to try and adjust the the contact point of the batter. And I think people are getting more smart around the way that they're doing it, and just bowling the same thing over and over again and hoping for the best isn't necessarily the best way. But also, I think looking at the England game and looking at when they bowled in that first innings, there's no way in the world that they were trying to hit back of a length all the time. They just didn't execute their plans. There's no way that Nathan Lehmann and Shane Bond and those guys came out with the plan that they did, and England executed it perfectly and felt that they were unlucky, despite what they might say in their interviews after the game. When the ball has any offering laterally, you're not going to bowl back of a length on a regular basis, and that's what we did, and we let them off a hook. And as a result, when the ball went flat and we tried to adjust our plans, the 2, 3, 4 batters were in and could make merry hay and get a total that was ultimately going to be too much for the rest of the game. So sometimes you have to look at execution, and going back to 06, 07 where we lost 5-0, and they were far better than us over the course of every single test match, probably bar the Adelaide test match. The plans that we had in 05 weren't dissimilar to the plans that we had in 06. There might have been a subtle little thing that may have happened over the interim period around somebody's technique that we would go into, but ultimately we didn't bowl anywhere near as well in 06, 07 as we did in 05, where we were absolutely magnificent. And that's not me or anybody else trying to abscond responsibility. At the end of the day, execution is the crucial thing. The easy thing for us is to come up with a plan. I've come up with lots of plans that have worked and lots of plans that haven't worked, but certainly when they have worked, I've never tried to take any credit for it, because it's all down to the person trying to execute that plan, isn't it? That's the important bit.
Let's move on to some questions now. Questions that have been sent in by listeners to the show, or maybe readers to the PitchVision website over at pitchvision.com. And the way this works is we answer 2 questions, and then we choose one of those questions as the winner of our competition, and the prize for that is an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. And the first person this week to send in a question is Mitch, and Mitch says, against spin, I'm not assured in playing the sweep off a ball on the stumps. I tend to miss it or top edge it. I think this may be due to me not getting low enough and in a good position. Advice on this shot in particular would be very much appreciated.
It's a great question, isn't it? And I think the players who are the best sweepers of a ball either fall into one of 2 categories. One being that they've got a fantastic sweep and they can sweep it off the stumps, and they can repeat their body position, they can repeat the motion irrespective of what line the ball is. And then you've got players who aren't as adept at sweeping off of the stumps and therefore don't. So they just pick the line and they play the sweep based on line rather than length. And there's been heaps of those, and I'd have probably been one of those. I fancy myself as a sweeper. I had to, because I didn't have a lot else against spin. So I had to be good at sweep, but I would very much use my guard to assess where the ball was to see whether my sweep shot was an attacking option, because ultimately in terms of length, the sweep shot's often played to a ball that is of the best length that the spinner can bowl at you. So I would, against a leg spinner, I would line my guard up with leg stump, and if a ball went outside the line of my toes and I knew that it was safe to have a sweep at it from an LBW perspective, and so I could commit into that and probably hit the positions that Mitch is wanting to hit. And then equally, if an off spinner was bowling, I used to make sure that I knew where I'd take my guard across, know where my off stump was, and basically if it bounced outside the line of my stumps, trying to spin it back in towards my stumps, I'd slog sweep it. And that was as simple as I tried to keep it. And then you get the players like an Andy Flower who could sweep off of the stumps, wide of the stumps, outside leg, outside off, because he practiced his sweep position so much going into those different lines and could hit it off of any surface at any time, irrespective of the line that the ball was bowled. A lot of players like myself felt that I wasn't able to commit to the position to be able to sweep from when it was straight as much as I would do when it was outside the line of off stump, because I knew I couldn't get out LBW. So I was committed into my movement and therefore fell into that position a lot better than I would do when it was straight. The bowl bowler, I think, would probably know if I started to sweep him straight, then it meant that he'd been bowling so well or set such a good field that he was cutting off my normal scoring options. So practice is crucial. If you talk to Andy Flower about the way that he went about his formative years, it was all about practice, and he challenged himself to be able to sweep and sweep and sweep and sweep and sweep. He saw it as a point of difference. He realised he was good at it when it went outside the line of off stump and outside leg, and he really challenged himself to be able to hit those same positions when the ball was straight, whereas probably I steered away from that. I was a bit reticent of doing that, and ultimately that's what made him a player who could do it in any conditions from any line, whereas for me I had to wait for the bowler to go into areas that I was happier with, and when they came into other areas I was very limited and didn't put much pressure back on him. So to me it's practice. That practice might look like some bobble feeds going into straight, making sure that you're getting the right alignment, making sure you're getting the right balance, making sure you're getting low enough. And in fact, some of the sweep stuff that I've done this week in an article that's going to go out, and an associated video using a hockey stick as a starting point for sweep shots might be a good way of doing that, because you can have bobble feeds, you can hit it off the ground just to get used to those positions, and then you can build up the challenge of the progressions when you're ready to eventually get it into facing bowlers and doing it. It's something that I didn't do. I just stuck with my two areas of strength and hoped for the best when it wasn't something that Andy Flower, who was the best that I ever played with or against as a sweeper of the ball, that's the sort of practice that he would have done in order to get himself to be good enough to do it anywhere in the world.
There is a lot going on with the sweep, isn't there? It's one of those shots where you feel like it's a bit of a confidence shot in that, if you think, well, it's on the stumps, if I miss this, I hit it either straight up in the air or I miss it completely and get bowled or get LBW, I'm going to look like a prize clown. So I don't want to do that. So there's a lot of confidence involved in knowing that you can get into that position and you can make contact with the ball, some kind of contact with the ball. I think that's kind of what you were saying there, Gareth. You stuck to what you knew you could do. You felt you were confident in those things, and you stuck with those things. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that, really. I mean, yeah, you can experiment, you can play around with things, you can try things. But if you've got a way of doing it, you found a way of doing it, then stick to the way of doing it. Or if you find another way to get around that problem. I remember years ago, talking about sweep shots. Jeff Boycott, I think, was talking about sweep shots on the radio, and he said, "What's wrong with taking two steps down the pitch and hitting it through mid-on?" Which is an equally valid way to play a length ball from a spinner. So it's not like you have to sweep, and it's not like you have to do it in the absolute classic position. I've seen guys who are quite good with their hands, who sort of especially hockey guys who can do a sweep from a much higher position and not feel like it's awkward for them at all. They could sort of use their wrists almost to play the shot rather than their whole body getting down on one knee and playing across it and all that kind of thing. So I think with the sweep, there's so much going on, both in terms of technique, in terms of confidence, in terms of sort of just the way that the shot is seen, that it's one of those things that you just you get in there, you get on with it, you try and hit it, and then you work around it until you find a way of doing it. And it's a bit messy, but that is the best way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that process. I'd certainly encourage Mitch to have a go at it. It sounds to me from his question that he's got a sweep from other lines that works. And be braver than me, basically, and try and adopt the same positions by progressing your drills, which I never did. My drills were always just facing people in net, so I was either succeeding or failing in my head, rather than actually working through a process to build up that confidence that you talk about. So the way that we do it nowadays is much more effective at layering up, isn't it? Layering up the approaches, building the confidence, then going to the next progression. Eventually you get it up to that completely functional position where you're facing bowlers and you're doing it in nets there, and that's the ultimate test. But there's a process to it, whereas I just went in straight at the ultimate test and expected it to work for me, and when it didn't, I probably cried and ran home to my mum. Which is just rubbish, really. So that's what I would suggest to him. And going back, I mean, I know you're paraphrasing Sir Geoffrey, but it's not always easy to run two steps down the pitch and hit it through mid-on, is it? If you think about Shane Warne or a left arm spinner, or you think about the way that left arm spinners bowl now, which is effectively to pitch the ball just inside the skyline and hit the stumps, isn't it? Since DRS has come into, there's more balls from spinners now that are hitting the stumps than there were before, because DRS gives more LBW opportunities than it did before. I remember, playing first class cricket, and if I went forward and played a forward defensive shot and it hit me on the pad, I'd get given not out. Yet if I got further forward and swept, I'd get given out. And that was how it was.
That still happens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But nowadays, and I think we're even seeing it now in club cricket, that the umpires are taking notice of what's happening on the television. So every time somebody appeals for an LB and it's given out or given not out, and then the skyline comes on, that's informing the decision making, isn't it? And if you're in a situation where you have to score and you're playing against a left arm spinner who is holding his line and he's pitching it just within the line of the stumps and hitting the stumps on a more regular basis, unless you're good at doing the boys come down 2 steps and hit it, which isn't easy when that ball's coming from wide on the crease into straight and then straightening up again, then the sweep option is a fantastic one to practice. But you've got to challenge yourself to get through that period of time where it feels horrible and it feels awkward and you're not making as much progress as you want, because progress, whenever we're building something, is never linear, and that's what I didn't get when I was playing. That's what I wasn't challenged on enough when I was playing. If I couldn't do it straight away, it's because I couldn't do it, and we know now that isn't the case. Andy Flower obviously had a different mentality, which is why he was number 1 player in the world and I was number 6 for Hampshire second team.
That can't have been out LBW. It said the batsman walking off. I had a big stride in there. There's no way that still I still hear that 30 times a season. So that's still definitely an opinion that is that floats around, especially with batsmen. I'm not sure how umpires feel about that, but that's certainly with batsmen.
It's a proven limited belief nowadays, isn't it? That one?
Definitely. The other thing you were talking about there was layering up, which is a fantastic process. But something I've been thinking about recently. It's still a very it's still a very young idea in my mind. It just popped into my head the other day, was this idea of layering down instead, where you start at the end, right? You start the decision-making part of the process, and then you work backwards towards the technique. And I'm just wondering if what effect that would have on developing a method for a player, where you start at where, when you've got a technique, what do you start with? You start with the decision, don't you? And then you execute the shot. So I'm just wondering if there's some way around that, where you start with the decision and work backwards towards the technique, if that is a way that might work. But that's just an idea that's floating around my head at the moment. I've got no more than that.
Well, I think it's a really valid one, because we only go in on that intervention, don't we, if we've seen decision making and technique falter in a real life situation. So I would never look to develop anybody's sweep until I've seen it fall down in match play or even net play on a regular basis, and then that's the time. So you go from that layering down approach, you go from the real life situation, and then you go, right, okay, let's go through it. But my preference at the moment, and this is, as you say, it's a young idea, so it might not be my preference in a few years' time, would be to go, right, let's start at the bottom and then work up once we've seen it break down in a match situation, because that's where we need to take our cues from as a coach. There's no point in taking our cues solely from a drill to start off with. We need to see the whole before we break it down into the different parts, before we build it back up to the whole, don't we? And we want the second bit of a whole to be a more refined and mature version of the first, isn't it? And that's called progress.
Yeah. I can't play a sweep, the batsman might say, but when you ask them what makes them think that, they say, well, we've never actually tried to do it. So, well, how do you know? How do you know? Let's try it first and have a look and see where we are then. Oh, okay, let's do that.
And it can be great fun, and whilst I related to the article that I've done for this week, have a look at it, because it's a bit of fun. I said to the kid as he left the session, which he's featured in the video, Josh, what happened in that? Tell me about that last 45 minutes. And he said it was great fun. That was the first thing he said. Isn't learning so much easier when you've got a bit of fun and in there, rather than it being a bit laborious and a bit over technical, I suppose.
Next question is from Colin, and Colin says, I'm 35 years old, and since the opening of an indoor sports centre in the area, I've started practising how to bowl. After a lot of practice, I have a basic action, but I can't bowl a good or a short length. I can only bowl full with very little pace. I have decent fitness levels. I run 3 times a week, and I do squats and core exercises. Can you recommend anything to help me bend my back? Speaking of old phrases.
It's a great one, isn't it? I've got a story here about bending back, which I'm going to talk about first. It's my second team debut. It was my second team debut where I was on the team sheet from the start of the game. Because my first one was because somebody got injured and I got drafted in from a game. So it was my official second team debut. I played with a guy called Paul Jan Bakker, who was an amazing bowler, a Dutch bloke. He used to play cricket in the summer and then be a ski instructor in the winter. He was unbelievable. He's a top man.
Amazing.
But notoriously a bit grumpy. And so he's bowling. We're at Bristol. Because I was a keeper, this is classic, they stuck me at first slip. So I'm there at first slip, and he's beating the edge, and and I just shouted out a cricket generic, didn't I? Because I'm just a kid and everybody's getting excited, so I thought I'd add my weight, and I went, "Come on, PJ, bend your back." Of which he turned around and just stared me down. He was quite an imposing figure. And then about 5 minutes later, I said, "Keep going, PJ," and he just turned to me and went, "Keep going where?" Right, okay, I'll be quiet now. I've opened my mouth twice and had a shocker both times. I'll just concentrate on trying to catch the first one that comes to me. So bending your back, you don't want to do that too much, and certainly not to the side, because if you do that, Colin,
very true.
You'll be 36 and in hospital having an operation on your back. So first thing, what a great effort to get to 35 years old and wanting to be a bowler. I mean, that's phenomenal. I think expectation management has got to be pretty important in this. And if you're holding a length, and you're able to get it up there and able to swing it a little bit, I would say get really savvy about the field sets that you're going to have, because there's a real merit in being able to get it up there and swing it to a straight field, and understanding those fields. And how many club bowlers have we played against or played with over the years that have done exactly that and been phenomenal players, and being top of the averages at the end of every year. So I think there's a bit of expectation management. You're 35 years old, you come into bowling fairly late. The chances of you getting up to 90 miles an hour are limited, because you're not going to have enough training time on it, and you're probably not going to have enough access to the right sorts of things around you, and before you know it, you're going to be 44 like me, and the last thing you want to be doing is bowling cricket at that pace, mate. I can assure you. So if you want to still be playing in 10 years time and enjoying it, my suggestion would be work with what you got, get really savvy around what you've got. Great that you're doing your running 3 times a week, but maybe have a look at doing some strength-based work as well as some running and aerobic base work, and real basics, squats and lunges and core exercises, some push and pulls would be really good in building up the muscles and building up the robustness around it, that you can put more force into the ground to get more force off of it. Have a look at some of the real basic stuff around tent pegs and all of that, but ultimately be mindful of the fact that your training age is relatively young, and you're in a body which is in the middle to late time in cricketing careers, I suppose. So expectation management is really important. But physically, you've obviously got a good ethic around running. Can you extend that and build in some real basic squat, lunge, core, push and pulls? And I don't think you go too far wrong there, and you'll probably find that your pace will go up as a result of that, as a consequence. But get savvy, because savvy bowlers used to strangle me to death when I was playing against them, that is for sure.
Yeah. I think maybe the best single piece of advice I can give is don't worry about bending the back. Worry about snapping the hips through. That if there's one technical thing you can do, is get the power from the hips, because the hips will give you more than sounds like you're getting at the moment if you can get that hip through. So, in terms of doing that, working on technical drills is one thing. simple stuff like walking through and trying to get through the action and all that kind of thing. Good follow through. Show your name or number on the back of your shirt to the batsman, all that kind of thing. And also, as you mentioned, putting a little bit of effort in the gym, especially chucking medicine balls around is a really good one for generating power. Chucking medicine balls around and maybe jumping onto boxes. And if you can do a bit of that, muck about with a bit of that, you don't need to be particularly scientific about it. Just get some reps in, get some power in. Then that's going to help you when you're trying to chuck that 5 and a bit outs object towards somebody a little bit faster. And you'll find that in my head, I've got the image of a guy who's sort of getting through his action in a very simple way because it's very new to him, and it's maybe the ball's going up, looping up a little bit more, giving the old rainbow as it gets to the top and drops back down again, and that's probably why it's a bit full and a bit slow. So if you can sort of spear the ball down towards the other end rather than rainbowing it, then that's going to be maybe a little bit more. But in order to do that, you need to put a bit more energy into the ball, and that's strength, it's power, and it's hips. And if you're going to keep it as simple as that, then you'll definitely find improvements. But yeah, like you said, Gareth, it's improvements are different from becoming the best in the world. But he didn't mention that, so I think he's being realistic.
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, if you can put a few mile an hour on and get savvy around the game, you're going to have a pretty good career in front of you there, Colin. And as I say, massive congratulations, mate, on starting doing a skill like that at the young age of 35.
There's a guy in our club, I've mentioned him before. He bowls about 45 miles an hour, seam up. But he's been doing it for years, and he always is in the top wicket takers for our second team. Just trundles in, pops it on a length. Sometimes he puts a bit of effort in, gets up to 50. Sometimes he slows it right down, loops it right up. And people just go, especially second team lower order batsmen, they go absolutely berserk. They try and smash him out of the park and end up hitting it straight up in the air. And he has a great deal of fun every season just watching the people fall apart under that kind of bowling. So there's nothing wrong with just trundling in and popping it on the spot.
No, crikey, I've played with heaps that have done it and done it really, really well.
And that is the end of the show for another week. Before we go, we just need to do one more thing, and that's decide on the winner of this week's competition, which is an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. And the two questions that are up for the prize this week are Mitch's question about sweeping and Colin's question about taking up bowling at the grand old age of 35. Which one did you prefer this week, Gareth?
It was two toughies because it pulled on my heartstrings, both of these. The sweep shot being the first one, and the second one being starting a new skill at 35. But I think I'm going to go for Collins just because I think it's a great effort, and hopefully by doing a few exercises, by being aware of those hips, but obviously your hips are going to work more effectively if you've got stronger legs to be able to transfer that energy from the ground up into your hips. Is going to help massively. And then a bit of expectation management, get savvy around your fields, speak to some people that have bowled for a long time because they'll help you with that one. So Collins won it.
Well done, Colin, and get back to us when you pass 40, because then it starts to get really difficult.
Is that what wickets or wickets
and
years on the planet?
Yeah, having just got back from the physio, getting told that you've got to change some things because both your Achilles are on the way out. That's just from chucking with the sidearm. So imagine trying to tear in at 40. I can't even imagine it. Anyway, well done, Colin. And Gareth, if other people are listening to the show and want their question answered and want their chance to win the prize, how can they get in touch with us?
Well, we know that there are other people listening to the show first and foremost. So when they do ring us up, because it would be great to hear from them, it's 0203 239 7543, or drop us an email on coach@pitchvision.com.
That's right. You can get us on social media as well. PitchVision.com has a messaging system built in. We're PitchVision Academy there. That's our account there, so you can message us that way. Or you can get in touch with us via Facebook, facebook.com/PitchVision Academy. Or Twitter at PitchVision Acad. You can listen to this show every week as well. That's simple to do. Do a search for it in your favourite podcast app. You'll find us there. And you can subscribe for free, or you can go to pitchvision.com, and there you will find all the old shows, all the old show notes. You can download the shows, you can stream them, you can read the show notes, and you can get lots of articles as well. You can sign up for the newsletters, a load of things you can do to help improve your game or help improve the game of others. That's all for this week. We hope you listen next week, but until then, have a good week. Cheers, Gareth.
Cheers, fella.